Yeah. Hey guys, all right, just before the show starts, I wanted to let you guys know that my fight against cancel culture is still happening. Please go to the description below. There's a link titled Support My Fight Against Cancel Culture. If you want to help my fight, please consider giving a bit of a donation. All the information is in that link. With that being said, enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Let's Talk. We are talking about Afrikaans culture. This is part of the Afrikaans series, Afrikaans culture series that Mikhail and I have been talking about over the past few weeks. It's been a very interesting conversation, and we are talking about some of the myths about Afrikaans culture and getting a bit of a history lesson at the same time. We've spoken about pretty much everything there is to speak about. Well, not everything, but I mean, in a very nice way, spoken about the journey of the Afrikaans, of the Afrikaner. And in the last stream, Herman and Mikhail, Herman asked some questions. It got us talking, got us thinking, hey, Herman, why don't you come and join us? Because you're an Afrikaner as well. And it'd be nice to do an episode where we get a second opinion and talk about a few other things that is part of the Afrikaans culture, and you guys can kind of discuss with yourself. So I'm not going to be very prominent in this episode. It is going to be mainly between Mikhail and Herman, and that's fine. I will try and, if appropriate, I will keep an eye on the chats, and if people have a good question, I will address it now. I would appreciate it if you guys did it in English so that I could understand, so that I know that the question I'm asking from the audience is related to the conversation you guys are having. Otherwise, you can do it in Afrikaans, but then I won't be able
Ag nee man.
to give
Nou
you
nie so wees nie.
questions.
Bly soutie.
But yeah, guys, very quickly, thank you so much, both of you, for being willing to do this. I don't think Mikhail needs an introduction. People are very
No, I
aware.
live on your channel.
Yeah, you live on my channel. Herman, you
I have a
also.
sleeping bag just behind the camera.
Herman, you've also been on my channel a few times. But for those of you who
Yeah.
don't know, and if you want to follow these guys, Mikhail's Twitter is linked in the description below, as well as Herman's. And Herman's YouTube channel is also linked in the description, where he talks about traveling, which is very interesting. And he does trivia with his guests as well. I was recently on that show, and we had a nice conversation about Egypt, because I used to live there for a number of years. So please go check that out. But without further ado, I'm going to let you guys take it from here. So enjoy.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about this. As I said earlier, Mikhail, I would like to ask you a question tonight. I think, and it's a question that's pertaining to most of us young South Africans. Who and what is the Afrikaner in the modern day society? I'm not talking the Afrikaner that was set by the Nationalist Party back in the 60s, 80s, 70s during the reign of the Nationalist Party. I'm talking, who do I have to identify with today to call myself an Afrikaner?
It's a very, very good question, and I did try to clarify it in the episodes that Joe and I did together. I think that the Afrikaner should, in the modern Afrikaner or the modern South African and Afrikaner, it should really be viewed as a culture. I think viewing Afrikaner as a culture makes it more inclusive. I think it also makes it a lot richer. The Afrikaner that you grew up, the one my parents grew up with, and I was born in, and the end stages of apartheid, that identity was race-driven, and we've seen the damage done by that. I think the Afrikaner in the modern society, it's a culture. It consists, obviously there is still very relevant historical occurrences that are still relevant to our history and the culture itself, but I think you can be a colored and identify as an Afrikaner. I have seen it with my own eyes, and to great enjoyment. In the Northern Cape, I have come across black people in the Free State that identify as Afrikaner and have, in many cases, have a vocabulary that dwarfs mine. So I think it's the Afrikaner in the modern age should be viewed as a culture. And I think we are richer for it. Having public figures such as Emo Adams, a person of color that is staunch Afrikaner and loves the art and the culture surrounding it. The fact that something such as reel dancing has been, I wouldn't say it's been included, but it's been overlooked for such a long time, and it's now become more mainstream and noticeable within Afrikaner and being an Afrikaner. So I think a lot of values, Afrikaner values, can be maintained. Okay, obviously, from my point of view, it's a bit Calvinistic, but it doesn't have to be. But the idea of God created all man equal, and we should love our neighbor as much as we love ourselves. And by having Afrikaner be a culture, it makes that so much more accessible. And once again, I think it makes the Afrikaner culture in 2020 so much richer for it. I think we have a richer Afrikaner culture than what our parents and our grandparents had 40, 60, 80 years ago.
That's quite interesting that you said a richer for it today. Guys, if my internet is poor, please excuse it. We've been having problems with illegal guys doing illegal broadcasts on our Wi-Fi frequencies. So they're trying to sort that out. Sorry about that. If we look at the Afrikaner identity, and I'm throwing this now sort of on the wayside. When you travel outside of South Africa, you are not recognized as an Afrikaner, right? So whenever you are in Europe or you are in Asia or America, you are recognized as a South African. And that sort of bothers, I think, a lot of young South Africans, and from especially ages 30 downwards. You know, when you speak to young South Africans in South Africa, where do they need to find this identity? Because we have very, very good political parties out there. We have very good groups like AfriForum that is telling us this is the place where you find your identity. This is where you need to know your history. But taking myself, you know, for being very lucky to travel over the world, nowhere in the world have I been recognized as an Afrikaner, although my language, my mother tongue is Afrikaans. How do we portray, Mikkel, this identity, this culture, into the world without being called racists?
I actually get where you're coming from, because I was blessed enough to have certain parts of my schooling abroad, in the UK and in Thailand, and I was also lucky enough to have traveled the world, mostly Europe and Southeast Asia. So that question, it is true, because you are identified as a South African. I think the one thing we do need to recognize is, I think the normal on the street, your average UK citizen or your Thailand citizen, wherever you might be, might not usually have the understanding of the fact that South Africa in itself is culture rich. You have Afrikaners, you have Cape Coloreds, you have the Xhosa, you have Zulu, you have Tswana. So in that regard, it is a bit down to educate things, because people usually don't come across the necessary information to understand and read and come across that South Africa has more than one culture. So yeah, that is the first problem. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really have a solution for it, apart from you having to explain yourself about 3 hours to explain to the average foreigner. Listen, this is the setup. We very, very multicultural, mostly by accident and certainly by force as well, if you look at the Berlin Conference. But with regards to 30 and younger, where do they identify as Afrikaner? How do they find it? I agree with you. There are organizations in place, such as the Artikafeer, AfriForum, and many others that do make an effort to improve how Afrikaner culture is viewed, and simply just diversifying it, supporting things like the Ka in art club, these massive cultural festivals where it doesn't matter what race you are, as long as you're Afrikaner and you have a love for the culture. I think more needs to be done, because I think we'll both be in agreement to have that mind shift from that an Afrikaner is no longer a race-driven identity, but it's culture-driven identity. There's a lot of hard work that needs to be done. And I don't think at the moment there's a silver bullet that kills every monster with regards to that viewpoint, that to a certain extent obviously justified based on the NP government history and the Afrikaner, how closely it was linked. But I do think that what you and I are doing and the shows leading up to this that Joe and I did, it does help. It does give people another viewpoint where they can come and have a look at a different viewpoint and maybe have a broader idea of what Afrikaner culture is. Now, I'm not saying what we are doing is going to convince millions of people. I don't think necessarily what we are doing will convince a child of color that was raised Afrikaans speaking watching this might necessarily change his viewpoint. But I think what we're doing is a good start, and I think we are adding to that effort. But I think a lot more needs to be done, and I think a global scale situation where people, when you go to a foreign country and people go, oh, you're South African, what culture do you identify as? I think in that regard we have the same problem that any of the other cultures in South Africa has, is that I think all of us need to find a way where we can also, we're South African, but look, we are our own type of version of South African culturally. I think it's simply just a lot of hard work and effort and trying to stay on the path, trying to avoid strong nationalist or fascist belief systems like there was in the past, not to step in the same traps with regards to racist ideas and activities, and also avoiding situations where something can be misconstrued as being racist Afrikaner. So I unfortunately don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution. I think every Afrikaner or every person that identifies as Afrikaner and wants people to see it as a very vibrant and rich culture, I think we should all just make an effort to not only live it, but if you have an opportunity, educate people on it.
Yeah,
That's a very good question. A very good answer. Because this is on topic, there's a question from Reese Eddington. Perhaps you can explain this as well and add, why don't Afrikaners want to be identified as South Africans? Opinions?
Mikael, can I answer this one? I
You
think
can.
and then you can give your answer. I think, Joe, because of the difficulty of the situation of our past, that's my opinion, our past of being branded as racist. And this sort of happened to me in Hong Kong. While sitting in a backpack, as me say, okay, I'm Afrikaans speaking, I'm a white South African. And the next moment, and unfortunately, it was a journalist from America that branded me, and he says, oh, yeah, but that means you are Afrikaner and you are a racist. Unfortunately, that's the branding, I think, that's carried outside of South Africa, inside and outside of South Africa. And that's why I think people, in my opinion, are rather saying, okay, I'm going to either go for the Afrikaner or not for the Afrikaner identity. I don't know, Mikael, what's your opinion on that one?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm a bit closer to what the individual asked. Is I identify as an Afrikaner first, and I identify as a South African second. And the reason I say that is yes, our forefathers, those that came before us, did cause damage socially and economically, with apartheid and having this pro-race policies and ideology and movement. We have to make an effort to change those viewpoints. And I think there are a lot of sore wounds emotionally that need to be cared for and looked after. But I've always said it's difficult as a white Afrikaans speaking male to love a country where the mass media or the mainstream media rhetoric is, you're not welcome here, you don't belong here, Everything that's now going wrong is still your fault. It's very difficult to love a country that doesn't want you, because our culture wants us. An Afrikaner, a person identifies as an Afrikaner of color, will see me as a fellow Afrikaner. So it is a bit more tribalistic, but I'm firstly safer there. I'm encouraged to express myself in that, and I am more likely to come across like-minded people within my culture than within my country. And it is a sad thing. I want to be able to watch something as beautiful as Siya Kolisi lifting a Rugby World Cup and not have to worry about 2 weeks later that the rhetoric picks up again that Afrikaners don't belong here. Go back to Europe, do this. And we've discussed this. Our language in itself would not exist if it weren't for this country. We have nowhere to go. Yeah, but Afrikaans is grammatically and in syntax similar to Flemish. Yes, but that doesn't make us Belgians. Just because it's similar doesn't make it that. Yeah, but the origin language is Dutch. That doesn't make us Dutch.
Mikkel, quite interesting, and I want to take your point there that people should stop saying that Afrikaans is similar to Flemish. When I was in Belgium, and I think you probably, when you speak to Vlaams, when they speak Vlaams, man, for the love of me, I couldn't understand a lot of what they were saying. So grammatically, it might be the similar, but we have Malay, we have. And look, I'm proud of my mother language. I'm proud of being an Afrikaans. But when we look at Vlaams, now we're taking it back to European heritage, the German influence on our language, English influence on our language. We have Malay, we have Khoisan, we have Zulu, Tswana. All the languages are intertwined into Afrikaans, you know. But I would like to ask you tonight, let's go back, because now we've spoken about the Afrikaans culture, Afrikaner culture in who do we identify with in 2020. All right. Let's go back into the history. Where do we start fixing the problem? Because we have different views. All right. We have a group of people that hates Freemasons in South Africa. There's a group of people that's Broederbond. There's a group of people that is pro-Freemasons. What shaped and what changed our history? And I think we should tonight, for me, it's very important that a lot of people will go on at the braai going against the Freemasons. Oh, they're a bunch of cult. There's this cult group. They in Afrikaans is slagkatte. They slaughter cats, and they go to the graveyard and drink blood from a skull. That type of idea. But I think we should take a step back and the shaping of the Afrikaans community today as it is. That people should tonight maybe let's look at that part of our history. How the Freemasons helped shape the Afrikaans community as it is today. And I think you sort of talked about it a bit earlier. What was the influence and who were these people?
Well, what I think we definitely can do is, and I actually picked up on this in the comment section in the previous shows that I did, is firstly, you from a Freemason historical point of view and me from an Afrikaner Broederbond point of view. I think firstly we both together can clarify that Freemasonry and the Afrikaner Broederbond, which has now reestablished itself as the Afrikaner Bond, they are still an organization that exists, is two completely different movements, two completely different concepts, and had two different types of memberships. So I think for that, I think you should go first because I have briefly discussed the Afrikaner Broederbond. So if you would please just enlighten the people with regards to the Freemasonry, and then I'll come back with the Afrikaner Broederbond, or the Afrikaner Bond as we know it now.
Let me tell the shocker here tonight for most of you on Joe's stream. I am a Freemason. And no, we are not a secret organization. We are organization with secrets. No, we do not cover each other's bum. If you go down the road and you rob somebody and you shoot somebody, I'm not going to stand in court and say, oh, you are a good boy. No, you're going to go to jail. Guys, that's why I'm sitting on the other side. I'm a Freemason, proud to be one. And now in the next thing that's going to go on the live chat is, oh, but you're not in the 33rd degree. Guys, I am in one of the highest degrees called the Knights Templar. So let's settle that one. And I'm going to be straight and honest. There's been profile pics of me in my Knights Templar regalia. So let's stop that one right there. Not get into that. What I want to tell the people about the difference between the Freemasons and the Broederbond. The Broederbond was an organization set up by the nationalists. Actually started earlier in the 20s. Yeah, 1930. It was actually supposed to help Afrikaans people coming from the platteland when they arrived in a city, to help them find their way, if I'm correct, Mikkel.
Yeah, so
it was a help organization.
Yeah, was 'n help mekaar organisasie.
Yes, help mekaar organisasie. And you know what the strange part is? A lot of that was Freemasons was also involved in the startup of the Broederbond. Unfortunately, we know later on in 48 and later, the Broederbond was hijacked by political reasons because of their strong network.
Yeah.
And that's where the difference lies. Nobody could, the politicians could never use the Freemasons. And for one reason why. When you enter lodge for your first time as an entered apprentice, you take an oath on the Bible. All right? I physically put my hand on the Bible and I say, for in this lodge, I will not practice any politics or religious, meaning I'm a Protestant. You are a Presbyterian and Joe is a Catholic. This is for, no, I know, Joe, if you're Catholic, that's not. I will not try to convince you of my Protestant beliefs. It is to keep brotherly love. And that's where it comes. Brotherly love. All right. I will not practice politics because I might be liberal. I might be a liberalist. I might be a far left leaning. You might be far right leaning. But once we walk into the temple, we are all equal on the square. Meaning we are just the same. We are measured the same. That's why we have the square and the compass sitting over each other like this. You will be measured and you have to be squared in all your deeds and actions. And that's, I think, is where in 1948, where political and the Masons started diverging away from the Broederbond. And later on, you would find that there was a lot of Broederbond members that was also Freemasons, believing that there is still a golden midway.
All right, I'll quickly fill in, and if there's anyone in the comment section, then we can go to the question. So I've discussed it, and he's once again said the Afrikaner Broederbond was established in 1930 officially as an organization, and their whole point was economic upliftment. You could argue it was a white Afrikaner version of BEE in the sense of your rural Afrikaners, because as I've discussed, especially after the First World War and the 1914 Afrikaner Rebellion, and
Depressie, die Groot Depressie van 1920 tot 30.
The Great Depression, as he's mentioned as well, and economically, we still hadn't recovered from the Second Anglo-Boer War either. So you had about 28 years from 1902 to 1930, where in general, the majority of Afrikaners were blue collar, whether they were rural blue collar or mining blue collar, they were blue collar people. And the few Afrikaners that were starting to get a leg up, whether it be in politics or whether it be in economics, along with the RTKV, and this is what very few people understand, that the RTKV, even though it's the Afrikaanse Taal en Kultuurvereniging, which is the Afrikaans language and culture organization, they also had, obviously with culture and language in mind, but they also had these economic programs in place. And the Afrikaner Broederbond was largely just an economic practice, creating a network where Afrikaners do business with one another, uplift one another, and give opportunities to one another. And in that sense, it was a good organization. But by 1948, when the NP government took power, and from 1948 up until 1994, every prime minister, first minister, and president was an Afrikaner Broederbond member. It became more and more politicized, and you could make, there is academic argument for it. from academic research, the Afrikaner Broederbond had a massive influence in the fact that the church and the state were not divided during that time, specifically NP government and the NG Kerk. And as I said, it became more and more politicized. And when I discuss the archaic, stereotypical white Afrikaner, racist, purist identity that we are trying to move away from, was very much state created. I used the example where Louis Trichardt was an historically relevant individual. He became a mythological character, a legendary character, and that was an Afrikaner NP government propaganda machine. And the Afrikaner Broederbond here from 1948 onwards very much fueled that. So they had moved away from their very pure intentions of just giving an Afrikaner a leg up over essentially English business owners. That was in its purest form, giving up Afrikaners the same business and economic opportunities as what English people had been afforded because they were seen as British citizens. And obviously, when they became politicized, people like Siya Langehoven was very vocal. Many times in Parliament with regards to where the NP was moving, and that's where the Freemasons very much started
diverging. And quite interesting, and this is where I would like to come in. Siya Langehoven, the writer of Die Stem, was a brother. He was a Freemason. And that is, I think, that's why I want to get to, where does our identity lie? For our viewers out there, and I know a lot of them, oh, good grief, I hope the internet is holding.
You still there, don't worry. Die donkie het nog nie uitgebrand, jy het nog genoeg gas daarso.
Jy verstaan nie, ek is nou al so moeg vir hierdie internet. I think a lot of people don't understand the cultural influence the cultural influence on the Afrikaner of the Afrikaans community in South Africa. I think we should take a step back to Cape Town. All right. First of all, the Parliament of South Africa is situated on that's owned by the Freemasons. Lodge de Goede Hoop, Lodge number 1 in South Africa. It's right next to the Parliament. Right? Let's start there. And I'm very proud. It's a very beautiful lodge. It's also the oldest lodge in South Africa. Let us take that further. Within Cape Town, if you take today, how many churches today was money that was given by the Freemasons to build churches? Let's take the university. Cecil John Rhodes was a Mason, which I have to unfortunately say.
Just about that. Just ignore that he was
lost Diana.
Him and Benny Bernard.
He's like, yeah. And a lot of people don't understand is that the University of Cape Town, a lot of schools was built by the Freemasons because during the time when there was no money, the Masons, because of the strength was used for either goodwill, brethren that is in trouble, and what is deemed necessary by the Grand Lodge of South Africa, or the District Grand Lodge, or we just name a few. South Africans as revered, let me call it the far right Afrikaner community. They hold them up as these heroes, and in the next moment they are holding this guy up as a hero, and in the next breath they are calling Freemasons occult. They're calling us occult, and they are swearing at us because the Broederbond was actually afraid of us. They knew that because we stood on moral values, they knew that we will not bend and bow to the politics that was played by the nationalist government. All right, we will still continue to be who we are. All right, we did not change and adapt to fit the bill. All right. Siya Langehoven, as I mentioned earlier, GLP Moerdijk, Gerard Moerdijk. Do you know who that was?
Ek is bekend vir die naam, maar nie die geskiedenis
Moerdijk.
agter dit. Ja, ek moet bieg.
Gerard Moerdijk was the designer of the Voortrekker Monument.
There we go.
All right, I'm going to name it.
I'm with you now.
First Prime Minister of South Africa, Louis Botha, Freemason. I've got the list here in front of me, and I'm very proud to say these names. Thea de Vos Roos, Dani Tron, Freemason. A.G. Visser, Freemason. J.P. Marais, founder of Klipdrift Brandy and Coke. So you're drinking your brandy and Coke. That was
So basically, so we have to blame JP Marais for domestic violence on a Saturday after rugby.
Probably, yes. Okay, then we have, of course, MV Pretorius. MV Pretorius today, the first president of MV Pretorius. We have the PP Museum, President Pretorius Museum in Potchefstroom. Also known, and there's the lodge, President Pretorius Lodge, or the King Edward Lodge, actually in Coltonville, that's looking over the PP Museum. They are basically the custodians. If I'm correct about that fact, I'm not District Grand Lodge. I'm going through this quickly. Pierre Joubert, Piet Joubert, TF Burgers, 4th President. We can continue with the list. All names that's revered. Oh, and by the way, your most loved Piet Retief
Was a Freemason.
was a Freemason. Now, I'm going to throw in the cracker of all cracks. The Voortrekker Monument was built by money given by the Freemasons. Because back then, the government didn't have the money. And today, when you walk into the Voortrekker Monument, and this is, I'm saying this on authority of my brethren, look at the design of the floor.
I just wanted to mention it. Joe, if you ever leave the province and you go to the Transvaal, yes, I'm still old-fashioned. I speak about the Transvaal. Not only if you enter the Voortrekker Monument, there's a part created where the sun shines directly into it. And if you look at the Freemasons, if you look at the masonry carvings, it's very, not only because it was Freemason money and designed, but the elements in itself of the interior design is very much based on, I wouldn't call it Freemason doctrine, but many of the symbols that are looked at by Freemasons are found within the interior of the Voortrekker Monument. Because of being funded by Freemason money and being designed by a Freemason, it's still very, very, very evident to this day.
Now, Mikael, and this is where I want to ask you a question. Now, I've mentioned a few of people who are Freemasons in South Africa, all right? We've been scolded by the Broederbond. How do we, in 2020, as a new Afrikaans-speaking generation, look back at this history, all right, and say, how do we identify? All right. I'm a Freemason. I know how I identify. All right. But how does the non-Freemason who grew up in a community where he was told, vir volk vaderland, en bewaar jou siel, as jy die predikant teëgaan, jy gaan onder sensuur geplaas word. Ek sal jou voor die sensuurraad daag, en bewaar jou siel as jy by die losie verbyloop, en net daaraan dink, to think about it by joining those evil Satanists. And that's what we've been called.
Well, okay, firstly, the good news is die NG Kerk dink ek nie afgelope amper 30 jaar nog nie weer iemand onder sensuur geplaas nie. Ek kan nie namens die Dopper Kerk praat nie, maar die Dopper is 'n ander storie. What I tried to convey when we did the series is I think there is, if you look at Afrikaans and Afrikaner history in general, I think there are a lot of things to take from it that are still remarkable and noteworthy, and I still think there are a lot of tropes within being Afrikaner and let's call it stereotypes, but give a positive spin to it that things can be held on to. Let's take a simple example. Okay, they by that stage they still didn't identify as Afrikaners. It was the beginning of the identity of being a boer. Yes, the Great Trek was largely conducted because they wanted to dodge taxes and debt. Because that's why it's tax dodging. It's just really, really, really good. We didn't want to go to the Canary Islands, so we fucked off past Bloemfontein. I don't know why.
We left the Cape. They went through the De Kloof tunnel into Joburg.
Basically, and the English. I'm sorry for the English people watching, but because the English are generally soft and squidgy, they weren't really willing to follow us into the bush. Because the Afrikaners are many things, but I think the one trope that has remained is the Afrikaners. We are stubborn as hell. I think that is a character trait that will remain. We are stubborn.
I think that's the Irish blood speaking in most of us.
Yeah.
Just to be stubborn. Mikael, sorry. You mentioned now, moving out of the Cape Colony, establishing an identity within Afrikaans or back then. But here's my question tonight. All right. We were known as Afrikaners prior to 1948.
No, the Afrikaner identity, you could argue, began in 1914 with the Afrikaner Rebellion because it was referred to as the Afrikaner Rebellion.
I want to sort of throw a curveball here tonight. And so once again, how do we identify? Guys, I'm not against what Mikael is talking about. Don't get me wrong here tonight. I'm playing a bit of a different fiddle because I'm asking the questions that young Afrikaans speaking people are asking, right. Let's assume. Okay. No, not assume. Let's take Ragokie de Beer. Is it a true story? Did it really happen or not?
I think, as with the mythology behind Afrikaner culture, and you could bring in Volraad Woltemade as well, I think it was very much actions that could have occurred, but it was blown into a larger proportion to suit a certain narrative, and we've now very clearly discussed what that narrative was. I think, and I'm going to try to get to your question, I think a young person now that is Afrikaans speaking, Afrikaans raised, regardless of race, that is unsure whether they can or whether they want to identify as Afrikaner, where do they go, what do they do? I think one factor is, and that I think they can very much look at the positives of Afrikaner history, the history of being things like hardworking, boermakeplan, the heroics of the Second Anglo-Boer War, for example. There are many true historical occurrences that you can take not only solace from, but inspiration from an identity point of view. And I think a very important thing is for a young person that is going to, and this is the second part, is they also need to look at the negatives that previous incarnations of Afrikaner identity caused, and to learn from it and not to repeat it, because there is that loving saying that he who fails to learn from history is doomed to repeat it. So then this comes back to when I said that Afrikaner should be viewed as a culture. The idea that Afrikaner is pro-white and everything else, that's a negative. By looking at we are much richer and more diverse than is what is brought across. The fact that the first Afrikaans sentence was written in Arabic script, elements like that, is a positive thing.
Yeah, that's where I want to come in. The first Afrikaans sentence was written in Arabic script, all right? That is due to the Muslim influence.
Yeah.
Of the Cape Malayans that brought that rich Malayan culture into the Afrikaans community. Cook sisters, man, that is as Malayan or as Asian as you can get. Even today, if you go to Malaysia, you'll find cook sisters. Even in Thailand, I found them. And that's where I want to ask the question tonight. All right. How many lies were told? Now, I asked the question about Rachokkie de Beer. Now, that was written by Eugene Marais. It's based on a story that happened in Europe. But that was fed to the Afrikaans-speaking community as the utmost truth. Right. How many of these stories do we have to debunk? How many of these lies do we have to work through today? We've been told lies about the Freemasons. All right. Even me, before I became a Mason, I knew them as cat slaughtering, grave robbing, atheist Satanists that will go on all over the world killing people.
You forgot one, volksverraaiers.
Volksverraaier, joiner, name it. Then I became a Mason and I realized we stand for moral values, brotherhood, and outside of being serving my brethren, I have to serve my community as well. You know, isn't it time to start breaking the lies that we've been fed all over these years and tell the young generation, listen here, yes, Rachokkie de Beer was not true, but that was done by guys to create a fake identity. This is who we are. Yes, you might have Khoisan blood in you. Yes, you might have Xhosa blood in you. Yes, you might have a Malayan blood in you. But stand proud and be who you are.
I'm in total agreement with you. I'm in agreement with you. The fact that
sorry, Mikkel, I also want to then on Twitter earlier tonight, you get a guy called the Ossewa Brandwag saying, I'm proud. I don't know if you've seen it. He replied on your tweet. And I just want to tell these guys that Jessie Lars, the organizer of the Ossewa Brandwag, was a Freemason. So how many holes do we have to blow into an identity? Isn't it time that we say, okay, let's take all of this. Let's stop talking the past and let's start talking the future. How am I going to raise my son? My son who is of Irish descent. My wife, actually, who is of half Irish descent. My son who has a quarter of Irish blood in him. How are we going to take the future? And I would love to see the guys in the comments watching tonight. How?
I think, in a very short summary of what you said, I think it comes down to something very simple. I think we have the opportunity, and we should use that opportunity to younger people that are confused about whether they are Afrikaner or should identify as Afrikaner. It's a simple start of everything that has been brought across, whether it was the NP propaganda machine, whether it was the Afrikaner Broederbond, the Ossewa Brandwag, all of this, it starts with simply being honest. And I used the example earlier. In itself, was the Great Trek an amazing movement of people? Yes. But let's be honest about this and say that the majority of them took part in this to dodge taxes and to avoid paying debts. It doesn't take away from the fact that it was an amazing accomplishment by a small group of people that hadn't really had a cultural identity yet. But let's be honest about the causes of it. Let's discuss the pure idea of why the Afrikaner Broederbond was created initially in 1930. But let's be honest about what it became and why it shouldn't have become that.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Let's say Rachokkie de Beer is still to this day a lovely story and a story that should be taught to small children. It's still a lovely bedtime story.
It is.
Voorraad Woltemade is still a lovely bedtime story. But be honest about the origin of it. Tell people, and this comes from the far left as well, but that's a discussion for later. The whole thing about Jan van Riebeeck coming to the New World. Let's be honest about the fact that Jan van Riebeeck was sent here as punishment, and Jan van Riebeeck was literally sent here to open an engine one stop and a wimpy. That's the only reason he came here.
And because he was a scallum.
That was his punishment, because in the VOC he was caught for corruption and nepotism, and as his punishment they sent him.
Just stop there. He was caught for corruption and nepotism. Hang on. Did I just hear the new government you're talking about?
Well, I made this joke on a previous theme. If the ANC government ever wants to blame the Afrikaner for one thing, they could blame us for bringing corruption to this country, because essentially that is how it happened. I'm not helping our case here, but at least once again, we're honest about it. And let's be honest about the fact, and there's historical documentation to justify this. The 3 or 5 years he was in South Africa, what we know as South Africa, he hated it. He absolutely hated being here. There is memoirs, there are diary entries, there's official documentation between him, letters of correspondence between him and the VOC going, listen, I opened the engine, when can I come home? Because I don't want to be here. I've realized that the garage pies taste like shit. I want to go home and eat bitterballen. So let's be honest. Yes, Jan van Riebeeck, it was historically relevant. The Dutch, and the fact the Dutch didn't want to colonize. They wanted to open a petrol station because ships sometimes have a flat tire. But let's be honest.
Joe, sorry, you should get this guy on Comedy Central and get him to do more comedy, because he's not taking history serious.
This is why we love Mikhail.
Yeah.
But once again, let's be honest about this.
Yeah.
Let's look at the history. That which was important, that which really happened, but let's be honest about what didn't happen, and let's be honest about things that happened that was spun a certain way. I think that's a good step to take. I think it's a good step going forward, because then it makes it then easier for someone that is confused or want to identify as Afrikaner, going, okay, because you've clarified lies and truth, myths and reality, I can now choose what elements of Afrikaner culture I think we should be proud of, and what parts we should not repeat and not accept as being truth.
Now, hang on. For how long? And this is my question, and that's maybe a point where I'm a bit divergent on this one. Saying in a certain sense, I say I don't want to be. I cannot identify myself as an Afrikaner because of the lies that we've been told. As I said earlier tonight, I've blown holes into a lot of the identity of that we were sketched as children.
Yeah.
For how long are we going to hold on to this lie or these lies that help shape an identity? And that's my question, because let's look at all the organizations. You never heard the Atikoffie saying, listen here, guys, you know what, Ragokie de Beer was a fake story. It's a beautiful story that has moral and values that we can teach our children. Voordat Voltemade, heroism comes from selfless acts. Hang on. But that's also said by the Freemasons in South Africa. If you do your first degree. And then we have a long list of South African heroes that were Masons, but it was never told by the NP government and the Broederbond that these guys were Masons, because they used the Broederbond for the wrong political or for the wrong reasons. As you said, it became a cesspool. Are we going to be the generation that stand up and say, stop talking your lies? Are we going to continuously be attacked, called racists, because of a fake identity, let's call it, or not a fake identity, misconstrued identity that was created by a regime, because I cannot identify the Afrikaner identity that was created from the late 30s, maybe on, let's say 48 and onwards. Mikael, I cannot identify with that identity.
No, I can't either. I can't either. There's so many things that the MP government from my point of view. Once again, this is purely my point of view in this case because it hits home. From a Calvinistic belief system, it was wrong. The Afrikaner identity, the one we're trying to move away from, didn't love thy neighbor as thy love thyself. It did not treat God created all man equal as it should be. It did not look out for the well-being of others. And it cast such a big shadow about or over the other races within this Afrikaner culture that we should be actually moving forward and should be having prosper. I can't agree with it. And I think no one should. To answer your question, and it's going to be difficult because there are so many factors, positive and negative, that keep on butting heads and moving against one another. The end game, not the solution, the end game is when we reach the point, and what I've been trying so hard to do in the videos I've done with Joan. Once again, I'm not going to change the world. I'm not going to change the whole, let's say, 3.1 million people that identify as Afrikaner, how they should identify. I will never be able to change that. It's also not my place to tell people to change it either, even though in certain cases they should. Is that when we reach a point where the Afrikaner identity is seen as a culture and is seen for the good it does and the richness it creates, and that overshadows the lies and the terrible actions of the past, that is the end game. Now, the solution, once again, I cannot give you a wholehearted one-size-fits-all solution. It will unfortunately probably take a lifetime, if not more. But I do think that if people like you and I that are proud Afrikaner as it should be, looking at it culturally and treating every person regardless of race, if they identify as Afrikaner and if they enrich the culture that we want to have now and treat them with love and respect and give them the opportunities they should, I think we are at least helping the majority of people turn at least in the right direction. But at the end of the day, sorry, Berman, net but at the end of the day, everything that we've discussed and everything that we've done, the final decision within a young person that is confused or want to identify as Afrikaner, at the end of the day, that final decision, whether we do something about it or whether we sit and say, let's keep the history keeping going forward, let people continue believing stereotypes, either side of that spectrum, the final decision is we can't make. We should, and I think we are busy making steps that it's easier for them to start formulating their own idea of what the contemporary Afrikaner identity should be and what it was not supposed to be. But that final decision, we won't be able to make it on someone else's behalf. We should just hope that we've done enough to move the idea that they formulated about this culture is the right one.
So basically, what I want to ask two questions, and you've been referring to your Calvinistic upbringing, the same as with me. Growing up in a Protestant in the NG Kerk. But how does because in a way, in essence, you have a group of people saying that Afrikaner of Afrikaans Afrikaner culture is in essence Christianity. But here's my question. What about the Jewish family that moved to the platteland in 1900, grew up. He's still Jewish. He's still of a Jewish descent, but he's as Afrikaans speaking as me and you. Is he Afrikaner? The Muslim in Cape Town, who is as much part of this culture, because our heritage started with the Malayans. It started with the Khoisan. How does he identify? Because now he's been told, okay, you're Afrikaans speaking, but hey, whoa, Maria is Muslim. You're Muslim. You're not allowed into my kraal. And that's the construed ideas that I have a bit of a problem with around certain. You have to be Christian, you have to be Afrikaans speaking, and you have to have a certain whiteness. Don't get me wrong in that sense. I'm not woke here. All right, Joe. And
Ons is wakker, maar ons is nie kakker nie.
Yeah. And I've seen people in South Africa who's Afrikaans speaking, who does not fit that narrative, that has more moral and ethical values in them than most of these so-called, and let's call them hardcore Afrikaners. And what peeves me in a way is, on Sunday he will sit on the church bench, say, Hallelujah, praise the Here, but on Monday he will steal his neighbor's water. We have the saying in our area.
Yeah.
But where do we start changing? And yes, we are changing an idea. Somebody asked me one day, are you Afrikaner? I said to him, which one? I said, I'm a modern Afrikaner. Are we going to continue to call, is it going to be a group of people that's going to continue to call people from other parts of the world with derogative names around the braai? Or are we going to be saying, we are proud, I'm Afrikaans speaking, I'm an Afrikaner with a unique, or I'm a South African Afrikaner with a unique heritage and a unique language. And that, Mikael, is where I'm sort of now getting, where do we fit in 2020? We say Christianity, is that an Afrikaans? Are those the two pillars that the Afrikanerdom is built on? And we've just referred to where our history comes from. It comes from both Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, Protestant, Calvinistic. We have heretics, we have murderers, we have tax dodgers, we have, according to some people, the Masons. Are those the only two pillars that we are going to build this culture on?
No, it should not be that.
Sorry, Mikhail. Before you answer that question, I just want to say very quickly, we are approaching pretty much the 1 hour mark. It has been a fantastic conversation. But so this will be the final question, and then I want to get to the comment section. If I can just have a little bit more of your time, maybe an extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just to deal with some of the with the comments that have come through. And so Mikhail, go ahead.
All right. No, I'm once again in agreement with you. And in the previous episodes I clarified it. You don't have to be Calvinistic to have a certain moral or ethic backbone. You don't have to be that. You can be of no faith whatsoever and have what on a normal day you would term to be a strong moral compass. So I agree. I don't think, yes, I'm allowed to be an Afrikaner and a Calvinist. But it doesn't mean that because I'm this, Afrikaner identity as a whole and the culture as a whole should be this. And I'm in agreement with you. And I think the modern Afrikaner needs to subscribe to the Mikhail school of man the fuck up, buttercup. And if you have an uncle, if you have an uncle or friend or aunt or whoever at a braai that is making racist remarks with regards to other people, though, but they're not Afrikaner. Apparently, Afrikaners have always been stubborn and will stand their ground. no, I'm sorry, then prove it. If someone is saying something in 2020 that will have a negative effect on what the modern Afrikaner is trying to do, you call it out. You call it out and you make an effort to educate them. Don't just call it out, because Afrikaners, we love calling out shit because we have loud voices and we have one of the greatest vocabularies when it comes to swear words. But don't just simply call it out. Educate it as well. So the modern Afrikaner, or the person that wants to identify this cultural identity, not this racial thing of the past, call out racist behavior. If you are on the tube in London and you hear an Afrikaner down in the carriage making a racist remark, doesn't matter where you are. If you identify as Afrikaner, you will still identify as Afrikaner in the UK. So even there, stand up and call it out and educate it, because that person is not helping. And by you keeping quiet, you're not helping. You're letting it either stay or you're going to have it, it's going to stagnate. This positive growth for the Afrikaner culture that is diverse and allows all races and all religious groupings. If you are Afrikaans speaking, you were raised in Afrikaans home, and you enjoy the culture and the sport and the history and this vivid, big history that we have, and you identify as Afrikaner, then stand up to the racist arsehole from Sasselberg that is making unnecessary remarks. I had a massive, let's call it a debate, because it was luckily at least not a stupid argument. I was on, it was about 2 months ago, I was on the Urania Facebook page, and one of the posts was about Urania expanding and building new houses, and an Afrikaner of color requested, is because Urania's constitution states that Afrikaners are welcome to move to Urania. Yeah. But obviously, because of the past stereotypes, a lot of people of color that are Afrikaners are afraid to move to Urania. Not because Urania is the new NP government, but because they're afraid of the stereotype that is still existing because of the racist asshole from Sasselberg. And the admin of Urania commented saying, as long as you identify as an Afrikaner and you have a strong moral and fiber backbone, you are welcome here. If you're hardworking and you want to enrich the Afrikaner community, you are welcome. And I commented saying yes. And there was some asshole behind a fake profile that said, no, but the Afrikaner is white, and apparently we always have 10 toes, and you have to be size 10 and above, and you have to lose your virginity in the back of a Hilux. Those are apparently the parameters.
Thanks, guys. And I'm driving it. Thanks, Mike. Miguel. You just screwed up my idea of my Toyota Hilux.
Okay, Adam, I'm going to be honest.
I'm a two-tone short pants wearing driving an Hilux. And you just
Adam, let's be honest, I love car keys, and my dream car is actually a 2.4 diesel Hilux, so I'm in the same boat. But it was one of those guys on the comment group, and I had a long debate going with them, but firstly, the Urania constitution states, as long as you identify as an Afrikaner and you're willing to work hard and add value to the town, you are welcome. Secondly, you're making all these comments, but firstly, are you a member of Urania? Or do you live there? Are you on the board of trustees or whatnot? That he's like, no. So then how dare you firstly be a racist twat? And secondly, how dare you speak on behalf of an organization that is trying to create help have a better identity for Afrikaner culture at large? Things like that needs to be called out, whether it's on social media. Sometimes, yes, it does become a bit of a shit show, but the point being is, because it doesn't see social media doesn't mean you don't have to call it out. What happens thereafter, if it ends up badly, it does, but call it out there. If you're willing to call out something on social media, call it out in public, and it goes the other way around.
No. It's easier to call out Joe, call him a racist on social media from behind a keyboard. Miguel, that's Joe. That's the one thing. It boils down to having skin in the game. I just want to do my final relation. I'm in a community where I'm the medic, so I'm the first responder. Wherever, it doesn't matter who gets hurt, from which nation, creed, culture, or color, I'm there to help. And I've seen so many times people standing around a braai or at a function, and they're talking these in-depth politics, but I never see skin in the game. They never call out the lies that have been told, and they continue to fuel the lies. And that's for me where the problem is, I think, today. If we can get to a point where we can stop fueling the lies, there's so many lies about Orania, so many misconceptions about Orania. The idea that Orania is this Afrikaner bastion where you go there with bare feet and barely clothes on your back, and you walk out filthy rich on the other side because that is the Afrikaner. I think we should get past that point. And for me, is if you attack any other person, be his religion, be his color, how much different am I then from Julius Malema?
Exactly. And we have to move.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to move past that. And sorry.
Beskerm dit wat ons in is. Afrikaans is 'n unieke taal. It's a unique language. Ek is trots Afrikaans. Hoor my mooi wat ek vanaand sê. Ek is trots Afrikaans. Ek is trots om 'n boer te wees. Ek is lief vir my land. Ek is lief vir my mense. Don't get me wrong for all these questions and things that I've said tonight. I'm proud of who I am. But I'm sick and tired of being called. And Mikkel, we can agree on that point. As you said earlier, we are both from the same coin, just on different, we're on different sides of that same coin. I think that if we can tonight say to each other in South Africa, South Africans, let's take a hand. Be you a Bianca or a Joe or a Mikkel or a Herman. Doesn't matter which language you talk. Be proud of your heritage. Be proud of where you come from. Let's stand tall, but together we can change the narrative. We can say to each other, yes, Ragokkie de Beer was a lie. Yes, C.A. Langenhoven did write the stem, which we were singing under drunk influence from Klipdrift, that was pioneered by a Freemason, 12 o'clock on 31 December every year. Let's look at that. And that's my final word tonight.
Awesome. All right. So, guys, wow, that was a fantastic conversation. Do you guys feel happy with this conversation? Do you want to do another one, or do you feel like
I'm not finished with Mikkel yet.
Oh, okay. So.
Jammer oom. Ek sal nie weet nie oom.
Ek beloof oom, ek sal 'n bottel brandewyn bring oom.
Dit was nie ek oom, ek het nie slukkies uit die bottel uitgevat.
Luister nou vir my mooi mannetjie, luister nou vir my bitter mooi. As jy nie met my gaan praat nie, gaan jy weet wat gaan kom. Jy moet vir my bitter mooi hoor. En Joe, kom bietjie hierso, laat ek jou 'n les leer. Kom bietjie hier.
Joe, ek wil net vir jou sê, wanneer die oom met jou klaar is, gaan jy G4K4 wees.
All right, so I'm gonna get to some of these. We got a 14 Rand super chat from Totes and Comp saying,
sorry.
Thanks Herman and Mikkel, this was awesome. Thank you so much for the 14 Rand super chat.
Sorry, I'm gonna drop off. I just want to get rid of this cough. I've taken a sip of coffee that's gone down wrong. So okay. Guys, just 2 minutes, please.
No problem. Shame. I hope he's okay. All right, so just very quickly, I'm going to go through some of the stuff that was mentioned here. Vut Z-A-R-C-O, Vudzarco, asked a question, but I think it was answered. It was asked early on, but I think it was answered. Would you say young Afrikaners are less racist than previous generations?
Sorry about that.
And I think this was kind of touched on in a way, like at least.
I would say so. If because okay, I'm fortunate enough because even though my wife is still busy with her PhD, so she still has to be on campus quite a bit. Okay, obviously before the pandemic and lockdown and all that. And quite a few times we would share a car trip or whatnot. So I've been on, like, for example, the University of Stellenbosch campus quite often in 2019 at least, in the beginning of 2020. And I will definitely go as far as saying that the younger generation that do identify as Afrikaner, I will not purely go that they are less racist. I will go as far as saying the majority of young Afrikaners, let's say here from 16 to 24, 25, the majority of them aren't racist. Because Herman and I, the responsibility is with us still to put in the legwork to promote this culture of being an Afrikaner. But the nice thing is the young people that have already identified as Afrikaners, luckily they were blessed with parents that didn't have these misconstrued or sometimes propaganda-filled ideas that raised them correctly. They are helping, and it is making them easier. And as they start entering the workforce, they will be helping with this, what we are trying to do. So I highly, the cases of a young person identifying as an Afrikaner and being racist, unfortunately, that is from an institutionalized point of view, and Herman and I both mentioned that institutionalized small bastions of racism within the white Afrikaner identity, we are already making an effort to call out. So that is becoming less and less. It's still there, but it's becoming less and less. And if I look at younger people that identify as Afrikaner, and if I look at things like drama pieces, as you know, I did drama in high school and I love the arts, so I'm still very much involved when it comes to watching. You see a lot more multiracial Afrikaners in theater, in music, in literature, journalism. It's becoming a lot more open, the way that Afrikaner culture from day one should have been like. It's becoming more and more. It's not a fast process, but it's a good process. It's a good progress.
Slow. It's good progress. That I can agree. Yeah.
Maar Afrikaners is maar so 'n bietjie stadig, maar soms hardkoppig is.
I wanna try and read this. I don't know if there's any swear words. I don't think so, but it's all Afrikaans, so I'm going to try and read this as best as I can. This is from Mudtang saying, skat, ek dink die Illuminati probeer keer dat Herman sê verheid praat deur sy Wi-Fi to steal. I probably completely messed it up.
Okay, basically,
no.
Joe, you
went
went
well.
too far. Basically,
Yeah,
he's basically saying that the Illuminati is screwing with Herman's internet because they worried he speaks the truth.
Good grief, guys. And if you're listening, Illuminati, my fellow brethren, please fix my internet connection because, good grief, you've been giving me enough grief. Guys, yeah, it is on a side joke there. It boils down, I just want to say, guys, have skin in the game. Don't be afraid to stand up for who we are, for wie ons is. I think in a sense, the future for who we are we're going to become, is that if we can have these type of discussions openly, not be afraid to say, listen here, I do not agree with your idea of what this is. Let's take from our past, let's take from the good things from our past and stop fueling the lie. And let's start fueling the jet for the future with a new generation, our children. My son will grow up in a new generation with technology that will probably far surpass what we have now. And if we can give them a proper idea and identity for who they are and where they come from, I think will be the ones, hulle sal die waar deur die drif trek.
Maar ons moet die fondasie lê.
Ons moet die as te reg hê. Ons moet daai as te vasmaak. Ons moet daai boute vasdra. But it doesn't help we are trying to change and fix a problem. When one group of people are taking off the nuts on the one side while the other group of the, people are trying to fix the ox wagon. And I'm taking the ox wagon because that's basically an idea, part and parcel of who, one of the ideas. It doesn't help. We're taking the tires off and putting on mags on the one side while keeping in the past with the spoked ox wagon wheel.
All right, so I'm going to cut it there because I would
Yeah.
like for people to watch this. I think I should have you guys back at the next one. There's questions
Oh,
coming
Herman,
in.
from my side, I can speak hours to this man, so
Yeah.
I don't have a problem.
Because
So-
I'm going to drop this question now, but we're going to address it in the future episode, which is because this is a question for all three of us. Once you've finally figured out the 2020 Afrikaans identity, at what point can you consider yourselves as minority white Africans? A very interesting question there. And then he adds to that saying, born and raised in Africa for generations, are whites ever allowed to identify themselves as Africans? And then they add to that as well, saying, just saying and playing devil's advocate. So I think that's maybe a good starting point for the next episode. And then,
I'm going to be honest, my back hurts. That question was loaded.
Yeah, so I think that's a
My
good.
rug is kakseer.
That's a good. That's a good way to start for the next episode. I'm even going to rename this episode to. It's still going to be Afrikaans culture, but I'm going to rename it so that people know what the topic is about. And then very quickly, Stevie saying nothing more scary than when a boer says, "Luister nou, mooi vir my." And then Tot also saying, I think losing your virginity in the back of a Hilux makes sense. And everyone's saying great discussion. And so ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. This is all part of what Mikhail and I were trying to do, which is bring to light some of the Afrikaans culture and maybe debunk some of the myths you may have been told, some of the lies, as was discussed here. And this is was a very fascinating conversation. We're going to continue it in the next one. So please like, share, subscribe to my channel to get all the notifications. Press that bell icon. Don't forget about that. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the super chats. It was very kind of you. And sorry, Herman?
Sorry.
How long hou daggas dier?
No. Drink strong coffee. Boere koffie.
Lepel
Boere troos in die oggend.
Lepel
Elke man
staan.
wat borshare moet groei.
Dis polisie koffie. Jy lieg, is polisie koffie daar.
So I just want to say as well, thank you both so much for doing this. Herman, I hope your brethren will not be upset of what you said. I thought the Freemasons were a secret organization, kind of like Fight Club.
No, we're not a secret organization. We're an organization with secrets. And I can tell you guys straightforward. The secrets we have, die woord, die teken en die greep. And I'm going to do that in Afrikaans for those who want to figure it out.
All right, cool. And on that
You realize
bombshell,
when we go offline, he's going to send me an application.
Yeah.
All right, once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back here tomorrow night, hopefully, if the president isn't speaking. I don't know yet, but regular programming as usual. I'll be here with Yanni Vandervalt talking about tech for our Tech Tuesday, a new show. And I'll be on with Dr. DNA again, talking about something very sensitive. But you guys can go to my YouTube channel and figure that out and see the upcoming shows that I have during the week. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, please like, please share. Thank you to my guests tonight. And if I don't see you soon, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you at the next one. Hey guys, so if you enjoyed the show, please consider giving it a like and a share. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you're new to my channel. And if you really enjoyed the content, feel free to join and become a member. Don't forget about my fight against cancel culture. That's in the link in the description below. Support my fight against cancel culture. Go to that link and all the information is there. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching.